Hello, my name is Fran Colors. Today I will be discussing ADHD and how we can understand our students with ADHD. So, what is ADHD? ADHD is also known as Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. Now, this is a neurological condition, and it has been defined by the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders as individuals who have chronic or serious inattentiveness followed by hyperactivity and or impulsivity at a rate that is more severe and occurs more frequently than those of their peers. There are three types of ADHD. The first type is ADHD that is predominantly inattentive type. With this type of ADHD, you will see students who frequently daydream. They may have some difficulty with hearing directions, so you may have to give them directions more than once sometimes. And with their inability to effectively pay attention whenever they are doing their assignments, they may skip parts of the assignments just because, they aren't paying attention to what they're doing and they're just going through trying to get their work done. And you may also have some students who frequently lose things. So with that, you may have to find some methods or routines that can prevent them from losing their items in the classroom. A second type of ADHD is the predominantly hyperactivity impulsive type. People with this type of ADHD, they are a lot more physical than their peers, so they do a lot more movement compared to a student with the predominantly inattentive type of ADHD. This type of student will also have impulsive behavior. So once again, they'll have more movement in their seats, and they may also have a lot of movement with their hands. So there may be some tapping on the desk, and some of those other things that, may be considered a distraction to others. And these students will often blurt out. So with that, you will have to find different ways to just let them know, hey, we're going to stay on task. If you have a question, raise your hand. So just give them some of those reminders to help them appropriately share what they're thinking in the classroom. And our third type of ADHD is the combined type. So it's going to be both the inattentive type and the hyperactive type. So they'll exhibit both characteristics of the latter two types of ADHD, and they'll really struggle with focusing and controlling movement. So that's something that is important to remember. There is not just one type of ADHD. Now we're going to go on to some interventions. This is really important when learning how to support your students. So first thing we're going to talk about is our behavior interventions. When providing a student with an intervention for behavior, it's really important to make sure that it's structured and that you are focusing on something such as a reward system. And it's important for it to be structured. That way the student knows what to expect that's going to happen. So for rewards, you can do something such as, giving them a verbal praise whenever they are exhibiting great behavior. You can also give them small things such as like stickers or pencils or just anything like that the student would actually want to have. something that they're interested in. Just to show them that you do see that they're trying and that they're working really hard and that they are having control over their behavior. And it's also important whenever creating a behavior intervention to make sure that the environment is in a way that will prevent those behavior problems. So it's important to limit distractions. So if you have a student at a desk, maybe instead of them having their pencil box inside of their desk, you can have it to where it is in a cubby off to the side, so that way they are not wanting to keep their hands in their desk and to take things out and to do other things besides what you are asking them to do. And whenever you are talking to a student, make sure that you are providing clear and a direct reprimand whenever they are doing something that is not what you asked them. That way they have a clear understanding of what they should be doing and why you are pulling them aside to let them know what they're doing is wrong. For parent education, it's really important to remember that parents may not have all of the answers, and they need our support as well as the students. It's not your responsibility to provide them with all of the answers just because you don't have them all. So it's just really important to remember your resources that you have as an educator. You can reach out to some counselors. You can see if there are any types of services within your district that can be available to those parents who do need that support. As the teacher, you can work with the families by creating a discipline system that includes not only rewards but also consequences, so that way whenever behaviors may occur in the classroom, there is a clear understanding of what is going to happen and what is not going to happen. Okay, so remember you have support, and it's okay to ask for help. Okay, now we're going to go on to medication. Now, medication is the most common form of intervention. When it comes to medication, it is not the educator's decision to medicate the student who has been diagnosed with ADHD. When it comes to prescribing medication, it is the decision of the parents with assistance from a physician. So that's something that's really important to remember. That's not something that you are responsible for. Now, there are a lot of different types of medication that can be prescribed, but the most common medication prescribed for students with ADHD are stimulants, and these can be things such as Ritalin and Adderall. So those are two of the most common. There are also forms of medication that include antidepressants and antihypertensives. Those aren't used as commonly just because of some of the possible risk and side effects that may be due to age. Okay. There are also some pros and cons with using medication as an intervention. A con may be a student is not receiving their medication routinely, so it may be interfering with how things are going for them day to day. You may see some students who are very lethargic from being on the medication. So that's something that's going to interfere with their academic achievement because they're going to struggle with staying awake and staying focused and getting their work done. And you also have some students who may be dealing with suppression of their weight and their height gain. So those are some things that are important to remember that the students may be dealing with while on medication. Continuing with our interventions, we're going to discuss some academic interventions. Most students with ADHD do struggle with academic achievement. So whenever conducting your lessons, it's important to make sure that you only emphasize on essential information. Don't go out and give the students unnecessary things that are not important to their learning. In areas such as reading, I would not give a student a passage that's 2 or 3 pages. Make sure that you're breaking those things up. That way they can take the time to read smaller amounts of material and grasp that information for better comprehension. So that's something else that's important to remember. Whenever teaching math, try to also give those students extended time to get their work done. That way they do not feel overwhelmed. And it's really important that whenever doing group work, I think that it's important to do group work because everyone's involved and everyone is learning from one another. But it's important whenever you have students with ADHD while doing group work that you are giving them multiple opportunities to participate. That way they are not getting off task and that they are continuing to learn. And lastly, with environmental supports, whenever you are setting up your classroom, make sure that you are creating a learning environment that will support students in their learning. So try to limit those distractions. I know some people are really into decorating. Decorating is great. It makes your room look nice, and it's nice for students to have things to look around at. But let's limit those things, such as hanging things from the ceilings and having extra things around the students that may cause them to get off task. And you can also work on having clear classroom expectations and rules and routines. That way everyone's on the same page with their learning. Now we're going to discuss families of children with ADHD. So families with children with ADHD require support, just like any other family would with a student who has some form of disability. There are resources available online. There are a lot of Facebook groups. There are a lot of support groups. One in particular that I found was Adhd, ITUDE. So Adhd, it's a magazine that I found. They have online resources that provide support. It's really important that when you are dealing with families of children with ADHD, that you remember that you may be having difficulties with the students, but they are as well, and that we are never to blame the family for a student's behavior. So we can do our best to support those families. There is a link attached to this, just as some extra information as a resource that can be used. Thank you for taking the time to learn more about ADHD. I hope that this was helpful and that you can use this information to support your students. Thank you.